a kind of a monumental milestone Claude crossed, and that is it crushed ChatGPT on downloads. Now, we have to start with where this actually began, right? Which is something to do with the Ministry of War and a contract. So let's actually double click with that. For those of you who don't know, Anthropic is embedded within the government, both contractually and also socially in many respects. And I think there was 2 points of disagreement. And, I will say that, people say that Anthropic can be a little woke. That's one of the criticisms people give it. Like, they'll ask it like the whole questions and stuff. But I respect massively, obviously, I love that technology. I respect their hard lines. And they said, look, we have red lines on these 2 areas. These are the 959 areas, by the way, 100%. But we don't want autonomous machine guns and drones being deployed by our model because it's just not reliable, right? So we don't feel comfortable with that. Completely fair point of view to have. So they drew some red lines and they publicly said, look, we have is it the Fifth Amendment, Nick? I think give freedom of speech.
Who knows? They got a lot of amendments down.
I don't know. You got so many amendments. But one of the amendments, everyone in America is like, I can't believe it. Dude, I'm from the UK. We don't have amendments.
Canadian,
we just,
sorry.
Yeah, we just
no rights, no freedoms.
Various things happen over here. So I'm in the UK right now, but hence this fantastic background. But this I don't know what these curtains are, but they're here.
Very few amendments in that background.
Dude, I know. So the point is they had these big red lines publicly. Said, look, here's what we're not. They took a stand, right? And the public rallied around. The output from the general public was exceptional. Their stock went through the roof. Everyone was like, Anthropic's so freaking cool, and they did it. And the controversy was the second they pulled out. I think the announcement was like only a few days later. OpenAI came up and they've agreed, and Nick, talk about public image damage control at that point. And Sam Altman even came out. Maybe we can get Tyler and Jamie to pull up on screen. Essentially came out and said, look, it looked sloppy. It looked opportunistic. But the damage, I think, from a public point of view was real. What was your take on that whole situation, bro?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Dario Amodei. I just applied to work with Anthropic a couple of days ago. They launched some new position and, I really like their mission and their values. And this was one of the crux points for me. It was, them doing something that went directly against their short-term interests and sticking to their guns regardless of the fact that it made everything way harder. Right, the supply chain risk designation that the United States government is at least considering or potentially putting on them is it's a major problem. They have been one of the most direct and useful forces in the limitation of AI in other parts of the world to try and ensure American dominance here. And I think it makes sense, right? They are one of the biggest proactive proponents of compute controls on Chinese exports, American exports over to China for the training of their own models and stuff. They've done a lot to ensure American hegemony, and just to have them shat on there was nuts to me. The crux of the disagreement, I think, was about using Claude to autonomously track and then analyze hundreds of millions of Americans' profiles. And Dario said something we don't want to create a panopticon. We don't want to you remember my family is from communist Bulgaria, right, in the Soviet bloc. And so everybody had these little documents on them, and people would rock up to your neighbors and be like, hey, did Peter say anything interesting this last week? And if you said, yeah, you'd tell him and they'd fucking make the documents. That was limited by just human capital. And that was fucking horrific, right? Imagine if you had Claude capable of analyzing hundreds of millions, at the click of a button. So that was their hard line in the sand. And yeah, I respect them so much more because they didn't. OpenAI, meanwhile, just continuing to lose mind share and goodwill in general. It remains to be seen whether or not that move is tactical enough to ensure the US government flowing through resources to OpenAI helps them win. So in spite of their shitty goodwill, they still become number one. I don't know. I honestly have no idea. But from a moral perspective, I'm definitely with Anthropic on this one.
I think for me, it shows a couple of things. I'd be curious to know how this played out if Anthropic wasn't the leading model right now. If it was a third tier model, would that goodwill still have carried through? I think it can. I think it connects to what I'm observing here is that people have a deep fear about AI. Actually, they have a fear of being left behind, and they also have several fears about how AI will present itself in their lives, either through deep state surveillance. And the fact that a company like Anthropic have stood up and have scruples, not saying the other ones don't have scruples, but this is a clear example of the presentation of the scruples, people gain confidence from that because they took, like you said, a deliberate action against short-term benefit for their values. Whether you agree or disagree with all their values, maybe you like, maybe you don't, they took a stand. I watched the interview with their CEO. I was actually super impressed with it. He presented extremely well. I was very impressed with it. And I like that he was not afraid to say, we just don't disagree with that. And look, we agree on 999 issues, just this one thing we don't. Like, and if that's a deal breaker, then it's a deal breaker, but we don't want to do that. And I think I have massive amount of respect for him for doing that, which is really cool.